The immigration system in Europe is shaking like a house of cards under the weight of migrants, both legal and illegal. Europe seems to be the go-to place for desperate people searching for a better life. Some are escaping war and persecution, some poverty, while others are trying to rebuild their lives after facing natural disasters. Contrary to this devastating picture, migration is not a one-way street. While some regions in Western Europe are heavily burdened with a massive influx of illegal immigrants, there are others in Eastern Europe that actually need them. Join us as we explore Eastern Europe versus Western Europe and how they crack the tough case of migrants. It's no secret that the leadership of Eastern and Central Europe is tough as nails when it comes to migration. Let's just say that the rigid stance and unbending migration policies of Eastern Europe are no easy-breezy matter for any potential migrant to overcome. Now, of course, this shouldn't come as a shock to anyone. The leaders of these countries are not very big on the idea of migrants and asylum seekers entering their borders. If anything, the political leadership of Eastern Europe wants to clamp down on the flow of migrants. Their stance is rooted on the staunch belief that foreign nationals might A. pose a security risk, B. cause cracks in social stability, and C. break down cultural unity. Take Hungary, for example. It took in only 10 refugees. Yes, 10 in the year 2022, which proves that it doesn't have the most stellar record when it comes to extending a helping hand and taking in those seeking asylum. Sure, the European Union's biggest court wasn't too happy about Hungary's bold moves, but Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has some very unique views on the entire migration conundrum. The question here is, what will it take for him to budge from his stance? After all, he's no ordinary leader. He's a leader who strongly believes in a homogeneous Hungary. And not just that, he also claims to be some kind of flag bearer for the continuation of Europe's Christian values. As such, the idea of an ethnically, religiously, and culturally diverse body of migrants flooding into Hungary might not be too appealing to him. Let's go back to the same year, 2022, when the conflict in Ukraine was heating up. It was Poland and the Czech Republic that opened their borders, and their hearts received millions of Ukrainians fleeing the war zone. But still, the four Visegrad, or V4, which consists of Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, are not the most eager to take in refugees. If anything, their stance remains tough and unshakable. So much so that some political leaders, such as Slovakia's prime minister, use the refugee crisis as a stepping stone to gain more political power. Robert Fico's Left Populist Party used a tried and tested formula to nail last year's election victory. They capitalized on the anti-refugee sentiment prevailing in the country. In fact, Slovakia has taken things up a notch by imposing super strict border control. They don't want to deal with illegal immigration from the Balkans. And it's not a new phenomenon. Just take a look at trends from the last decade. The European Union suffered one of the worst migrant crises in 2015. But did the Visegrad Four bend their position? Not at all. They stood their ground in opposing the refugee quota system. To make their position crystal clear, Hungary and Slovakia were staunchly against the proposition. They saw the quotas as an attack on their sovereign rights. Now, in case you're confused, the refugee quota system sought to divide the refugees among different countries. This allocation was based on factors such as population and GDP. Now, this hardline stance might have worked for Eastern Europe in the recent past, but now it looks like things are going horribly wrong. There's a cone of silence that surrounds Eastern European leaders. Europe's turbulent present showcases a complex reality, and Eastern European nations are no exception to this state. They have their own share of complications to deal with, and one of the most pressing hidden issues that they face is a severe shortage of skilled workers. The unfriendly stance that these nations have towards migrants seems to have worked for them in the past, but it might not be the healthiest strategy to deal with the challenges they're facing today. Today, the Eastern European leadership needs to develop a migrant-friendly narrative, one that counts the economic perks of allowing in third-country nationals. After all, the gap created by a lack of skilled workers can only be filled by letting in newcomers. In a way, it's kind of ironic. The very same voting public that bought their leaders' anti-migrant narrative to put them in power now might have to work around its fears of economic chaos, the otherness of incoming migrants, and instability. There's no other way to combat this growing problem, or the consequences could be dire. Let's take the case of Hungary again. The country has big plans to emerge as an electric vehicle manufacturing hub in the coming future. It also wants to become a defense industrial base. Picture this. Germany has already set its sights on the Hungarian city of Zalaegerszeg.
Hungary completed its first locally made Lynx Kf-41 infantry fighting vehicle at the Rheinmetall factory in Zalaegerszeg, Defense Minister Krzysztof Szalai-Bobrovnicki announced on July 25.
Rheinmetall, the German defense contractor, has set up a factory in the region to produce state-of-the-art armored vehicles. So now you know why Hungary requires human capital. But wait, it gets even better. China's CATL also has big plans for the country. It will build a $7.9 billion EV plant. Now that's a pretty hefty investment on European soil, the first of its nature to date. So now Hungary is in a kind of desperate position. Not wanting to lose out, it did not take long for the country to change tracks. After all, it's looking for a quick solution to pull in foreign workers for employment. And the best way forward for Hungary to do so was to spring a new immigration law, one that offers short-term visas to skilled workers. And not just that. Apparently, Hungary is also outsourcing contracts to speed up the visa processing process. Countries such as Oman, Qatar, and Uzbekistan are part of this initiative. But Hungary is not the only country that has made a turnaround. Eastern Europe is trying to loosen some of its stringent measures that previously governed its immigration policies. In the Czech Republic, highly qualified workers are in great demand day in and day out. Now, Czech policymakers are smart cookies. They don't play about when it comes to their country's economic progress. As such, the Czech Republic has given its laws a makeover to coincide with the EU's Blue Card Directive. Now, if that sounds confusing, the directive deals with measures concerning arrival and residence conditions of skilled workers. Poland and Slovakia have also jumped on the bandwagon. Poland has made requiring work permits easier for skilled immigrants. The interesting thing about Slovakia is that even though skilled personnel are arriving, employed by British companies such as Jaguar and Range Rover, it's not enough. Slovakia still has 80,000 job positions that need to be filled. Yep, it's healthcare, IT, automotive, and transport sectors are looking for workers. Now, things might be on the up and up for Eastern Europe, but let's take a minute or five to talk about Western European countries. And here, you'll find that a different kind of migration danger is looming on the horizon. As thousands upon thousands of migrants set foot in Europe, some of them illegally, it's opened a new can of worms for the region. Policymakers are now divided on how to best deal with them. If you look at the figures, the year 2023 alone saw around 385,000 migrants arrive on European shores. But here's the catch. These migrants were illegal. The figures also indicate a triple jump from the slow influx of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this one's a real shocker, but the last decade saw the arrival of 29 million migrants, all people who decided to take a gamble to start their life afresh in Europe. Some migrants take on dangerous sea voyages, putting their lives at tremendous risk to make it to Europe and enter without legal permission. So, of course, it's logical to ask, who are these irregular migrants and where do they come from? Well, Syria tops the list of the greatest number of irregular migrants to reach Europe based on statistics from 2023. Their plight is a result of a war that lasted well over half a decade. Syrian refugees are followed by Guineans and Senegalese, fleeing economic hardships. Next up are Afghan refugees who are desperately trying to escape Taliban rule. Imagine being in such a state of danger, desperation, and urgency that you're willing to undertake such a nightmarish journey. So, do the migrants find the happy ending that they're looking for? The reality is different and a lot harsher than we all expect. Imagine the picturesque southern tip of Italy. It's here that migrants reach European shores in large numbers to find a better life. In fact, Lampedusa in Italy has been dubbed the gateway to Europe, as this is a much favored entry point with asylum seekers. We're not even kidding when we say that Lampedusa can get so crowded that once almost 7,000 migrants arrived here in 2 days. In 2023, the shores of Lampedusa received around 157,000 people by sea. That is a lot of people. So, what's the process that these migrants have to undergo? And how does Italy's immigration system deal with this issue? In order to manage the chaotic situation more effectively, large numbers of migrants, say in thousands, are sent to either Sicily or mainland Italy. The migrants then undergo processing, and let's just say, they do not receive the most ideal treatment or conditions to get by. Human rights groups and the Italian opposition do not hesitate to call it poor. Most migrants meet a fate tainted by poverty and tough circumstances. and many have to live in survival mode on the streets to meet their needs for food, water, and shelter. Applying for asylum is a double-edged sword. If they're successful, they can enjoy the right to education and work. Failure spells deportation. Of course, they need to present proof of dire circumstances back home. An advantage of this process is that they can stay for a period of 6 months in Italy. Other states that are at the very forefront of the migration crisis and are complaining about it are Greece and Spain, which are drowning under the burden of incoming refugees. The problems of these frontline states are rooted in the Dublin regulation. According to this law, migrants need to apply for asylum in their country of arrival. A migration policy deal was struck in April 2024 to ease some of these countries' load and share responsibility. But the European bloc is not sitting idle, twiddling its thumbs as migrants pour in. It struck a deal with non-European countries such as Turkey and taken it as far as Egypt, Lebanon, Mauritania, and Tunisia to help curb migration, dangling the promise of financial aid before them. The UK and Italy, too, have taken matters seriously and have shaken hands with developing countries like Rwanda and Albania to strike deals to intercept migrant boats and to speed up deportation measures. Right-wing parties and groups are gaining traction in countries like Germany and France to counter the fallout from the migrant crisis. Austria, Belgium, and the Netherlands have such representation at a government level now. The current scenario might spell out tougher measures to tackle incoming migrants. What's your take on the current migrant situation in Europe? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button.